What is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? According to 40, that's right, 40 wrestling YouTube channels will be decided here today on SCW. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. As I said, that 40 great YouTube channels have all come together to be in one place here today. And big thank you to everyone who's got involved. We've got some very talented content creators here in the wrestling community. So make sure to go and support them as well. The link to every channel is in the description of this video, so make sure to go and click on their links, give them a subscribe, check out our video and show them some love as well. And a big thank you to everyone that took the time out to be part of this video. This could not have been done without you. So without further ado, let's go into the rules of how this video is going to work. All 40 wrestling YouTube channels have been drawn at random. I will introduce who drew numbers 1 and 2. They will share their opinion on what is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. This will then continue until all 40 wrestling YouTube channels have given their opinion on what is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. If you wish to know my favourite WrestleMania match of all time, I too am drawn at random and can appear in this video at any time, so you must stay tuned. YouTube channels with more than one person are voting individually. For example, 2 people from the same channel with the same answer equals 2 votes. Different answers from each member of a YouTube channel gives 1 vote to each WrestleMania match chosen. I will keep you up to date with votes and standings at regular intervals throughout the video. The winner will be the WrestleMania match with the most votes at the end. So that's the rules there for you, and just remember as well, everyone's opinion is their own in this video, so if you do disagree, then look, it's everyone's opinion at the end of the day, and don't get upset if we do find that Chavo Guerrero versus Kane, the 8-second classic from WrestleMania 24, comes out with the victory. And an extra little bonus for this video as well, introducing each person. Of course, we're going to go through each WrestleMania. I'm going to give my favourite match from each WrestleMania as we introduce each participant. So everything's going to be subjective with opinions throughout this video. So yeah, be interested to see if you agree with my choices of what I think is the best match at each WrestleMania. And of course, as we get to the latter entries of WrestleManias at 38 and for 39, it'll be matches I'm looking forward to for nights 1 and 2 of this year's WrestleMania. And entry number 40 will be matches that I hope to see at next year's WrestleMania. But without further ado, let's get straight into it then with our entrant number 1. Who drew number 1? We're going to find out for you right now. He's a YouTube interviewer who's interviewed the likes of Mickey James, JBL, and many, many more. Welcome back to SCW. It is none other than Joey from The Angle Podcast.
Hello everyone, Joey Carney here from the Angle Podcast, and a huge shout out to HHWShow for inviting me back on to discuss what I believe is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. And this one, it's very, very hard to actually decide what is the greatest WrestleMania match, because what goes into making a match great? Not the fact that it's at WrestleMania, but the other aspects, the storytelling, the drama, the laughter, the cries, everything all combined, which is why I have to pick from WrestleMania 19. It was the last match of Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. This match was years in the making. Stone Cold was already up 2-1 to The Rock at previous WrestleManias. This was the redemption story for The Rock, but it was also the finale for Stone Cold Steve Austin to ride off into the sunset just the way he wanted. This match had, like I said, great aspects of storytelling and drama and cries at the end, and even some laughter during the match with The Rock wearing Stone Cold's vest, or Stone Cold hitting a rock bottom on The Rock. So many aspects, so many great moments in that match. Greatest WrestleMania match of all time, WrestleMania 19, Stone Cold versus The Rock.
Big thank you to Joey there from the Angle Podcast, and what a selection as well. There's Stone Cold versus The Rock from WrestleMania 19. Will it be number 1 at the end of this video though? We'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, let's call in entrant number 2. And I was very fortunate to be on this podcast just recently doing a retro review of In Your House 2 from 1995. It is the one, the only, the Apron Bump here on SCW.
The greatest WrestleMania match of all time, Rock versus Hogan at WrestleMania 18. You can have all the technical ability in the world, but to me, none of that means anything unless you can get a crowd to care about you. And you listen to that crowd in the Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada. They cared about this match more than I can think of any other match that's ever happened before. Not just WrestleMania, but maybe ever. My words cannot do it justice. You have to go watch that match. Listen to the energy that that match created. And to me, that trumps any amount of moves any other match did, anything else. It was just a fun match to watch with two of the biggest icons ever in pro wrestling. That's just what wrestling is all about to me. So nothing tops The Rock versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18, just based off of the passion alone.
Big thank you there to the Apron Bump there, and what a selection as well. You don't get a bigger match in WrestleMania history than The Rock versus Hollywood Hogan. Icon versus icon. Will that be at the #1 spot at the end? We'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, you're not going to see me out for a couple of entries. The next time you see me, I could be giving you my favourite WrestleMania match of all time, but certainly you will be seeing me as well to give in the votes and standings from the first round of people's votes. But in the meantime, let's get in with entrant number 3, and it's great to have him back on the channel once again. Now, he was here for the greatest WrestleMania of all time. He's now here for the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. It is none other than Greg Morgan. GoodMicWork Commentaries is back here on SCW.
What's up, guys? Greg Morgan from GoodMicWork Commentaries back again, part of another YouTube collaboration with SCW Wrestling. This time, Steve wants to know, what do I consider to be the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? Again, it's really hard to decide that. It depends on how you look at it. If you're trying to actually pick the greatest one of all time that would be universally recognized as the greatest of all time, holy cow, you've got a lot of different factors to look at in terms of the in-ring work, the level of star power you had in the match, the crowd reaction, where the match was on the card, was there a title involved, was it the main event, all sorts of different factors you can think about. But if you're talking about your favorite match, it's, again, really hard because I have a very strong bond with WrestleMania 3 and the Savage Steamboat epic encounter for the IC title. WrestleMania 10, the opener with Brett and Owen, is probably in my heart of hearts my true favorite WrestleMania match of all time. But when I look at all of them, and I really am just, kind of gun to the head, pick one only, there's really only one answer for me, and that's Undertaker and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. I don't think I've ever been prouder to be a wrestling fan, and that shocked me as someone who felt like the bloom was off the rose with pro wrestling by the time we got to 2009. It was going to take a lot to impress me, and to have a match during that time, after I've already seen all the great stuff of the 80s and the 90s and the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression and all that stuff, and now we're up to 2009, and I see two guys that I grew up watching, The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, both in the twilight of their career, and to put on that performance in that stage of their lives and their pro wrestling careers brought a tear to my eye. It could have gone horribly wrong with the botch on the outside of the ring, but other than that, that match was as smooth and beautiful and perfect as I've ever seen. So, really curious whether people agree with me or not, but if I absolutely have to pick one match, Shawn and Taker, Mania 25.
We're having fun here. Zach from West Coast Podcast. Just letting you guys know what I think my favorite match of all time is in WrestleMania. There are so many to choose from. Growing up with Coliseum home videos, the Attitude Era, and so on. I had one in mind that I was going to tell you about, but WWE has rebranded the main event of WrestleMania Night 2 yet again. It went from Brock versus Roman to champion versus champion to a champion versus champion unification match, which is now the biggest WrestleMania match of all time, and rebranded again as Zach's favorite WrestleMania match of all time. I just want to thank WWE for branding stuff ahead of time and letting me know what my favorite match is, what the biggest match in WrestleMania history is going to be. I really appreciate this, WWE, and Steve, I really appreciate you having us on. Thanks for checking us out on West Coast Popcast on YouTube, and make sure to like and subscribe to Steve, SCW. You're doing great stuff, buddy.
What is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? Well, I've got to give a few honourable mentions before I give my ultimate selection, because quite a few matches come to mind. In fact, you think of the likes of TLC 2, probably for my favourite WrestleMania ever as well, WrestleMania 17. You got the, of course, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels 25 and 26. Both are legendary matches. You've of course got the likes also of Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21, and a match that was very closely my top choice in Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13, of course the submission match, the double turn. But to get my vote ultimately at the end, I've got to go with Hell in a Cell, WrestleMania 28, The Undertaker versus Triple H, with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. A storyline that had gone 4 years in the making. We've gone through both Shawn Michaels matches through 25 and 26, of course 26 being the career ender for Shawn. Through 27, Triple H looked to get some sort of revenge, even in a losing effort. The Undertaker returning at WrestleMania 28 to take on Triple H in the barbaric Hell in a Cell structure. And of course, Shawn Michaels conflicted as well. The idea is, will we call things down the middle? The moment where he didn't, where he gave his sweet chin music to the Taker, and of course Triple H hitting the pedigree to get that 2 count. The place just absolutely erupted. One of the best spots and time and delivery of all time, in my personal opinion, in any match I've ever seen, and literally had me on the edge of my seat. But of course, at the end, Triple H, defiant to the end, but knew he couldn't get the job done. Undertaker picking up the victory. The streak continued, and that moment at the end of the match where an end of an era felt very true. All 3 men arm in arms. It just was a very special WrestleMania moment for me. It was a perfect end to what I've played through 4 separate WrestleManias. So for me, my answer for you, the greatest match in WrestleMania history, The Undertaker versus Triple H, Hell in a Cell, Shawn Michaels, special guest referee at WrestleMania 28.
Yes, it's me, it's NXSteve. I'm back again on Steve's channel here to answer one of his, as usual, really difficult questions. This time you want to know my personal and favourite WrestleMania match of all time. I ended up whittling this down to 3. Honourable mention to the 2 that I didn't choose. Miz versus Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor, Mania 34 for the Intercontinental Championship. Opening match of the night, stole the show, great match. Go back and check it out because it's such a good match. The other one, WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold, controversial one, no, it's such a good match. The story going into it, but for me, I thought, I watched it back, WrestleMania 17, TLC 2, the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, Matt and Jeff the Hardy Boys. Absolutely loved this match. I watched it back and I was still popping like as if it was a brand new match. The interferences from Lita, Rhino and Spike Dudley, the crazy spots in it, absolutely loved it. So for me, TLC 2. But again, Steve, thanks for having me on your channel once again, and I'll speak to you soon, fella.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is Katrina from NCAT We Trust, and I'm going to give you my favorite WrestleMania match, but since I don't really particularly follow rules, I'm going to give you 2. So my first one will be WrestleMania 12 with Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels in the 60-minute Iron Man match, which went overtime and Shawn did win the title. Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania, coming out in his white attire, his entrance, everything about this was just fantastic for a WrestleMania. And again, Shawn is the reason I am even a wrestling fan, and so that is definitely one of my favorite matches overall, just because Shawn Michaels was in it. And then also WrestleMania 37 with Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, 2 black women main eventing a WrestleMania, again, the biggest wrestling event of the year. as a black girl growing up watching this, as a black woman, writer, content creator, or fan of wrestling, it was just so important to see two black women have the stage in that manner and just touch me and other women like me in the way that it did. And so those are my two favorite WrestleMania matches.
Big thank you there to Ian, Cat, We Trust there. And rules are meant to be broken there. Love both of those selections as well there. HBK versus Shawn Michaels, the Iron Man match, of course, that went into overtime. The boyhood dream comes true. And of course, who can forget last year's WrestleMania, Bianca and Sasha Banks. History in the making there, a very special moment indeed. So two fine selections there for you. And as well, also big thank you to NXSteve that was involved there, West Coast Podcast, and of course GoodMicWork Commentaries there, Greg Morgan involved. But what has it done to the scoreboard? Let's see. Early days into it, but how is it looking? Well, so far, every match has one vote, so technically everyone's in first place. But to go through the matches very quickly that we've had, of course we had Stone Cold versus The Rock from WrestleMania 19, The Rock versus Hollywood Hogan from WrestleMania 18, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25, we had, of course, Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 38, who knows, could be a few more people's answers in a couple of weeks time from now. We had The Undertaker versus Triple H Hell in a Cell from WrestleMania 28, TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17, we had Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match, and of course Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks from last year's WrestleMania 37. But it's still very, very early days at this point. It can all change. Many more YouTube channels still to get involved. So let's get in our next entrant. Entry number 8, The Best Man to My Wedding from This Week in Metropolis, a podcast that is very topical on the likes of technology, on the latest of Marvel movies, comics, and much, much more. And occasionally can get to talk a little bit of professional wrestling. He's been a fan since 1995. It is James from This Week in Metropolis, next here on SCW.
Hey Steve, James here from This Week in Metropolis again. Keep up the great work that you're doing. My favourite WrestleMania match, well, there's so many to choose from, but the one, again, that kind of sticks out in my mind, I think was from WrestleMania 17, if I'm not wrong. The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, two of my favourite wrestlers. Stone Cold, hands down, my favourite wrestler of all time. The Rock was at the peak, I'd say, of his career, or at least coming towards the peak of his career then. What a match it was. I just remember the theme as well for that Mania. You had Limp Bizkit's My Way, which resonates with me from not only being a huge fan of them, but just the story that it told between them two. And then the massive turn at the end when Vince came out to help Stone Cold and Stone Cold turned heel, and the shock factor was just like, wow. What a main event that was, what a match it was, and that's why I'm ranking it as my favourite Mania match.
Now, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, I wouldn't say is in this pay-per-view. I would say it has to be Shawn Michaels, Undertaker 1. That is the best one. I mean, can you ask for anything else? Two of the greatest performers in the history of professional wrestling going at each other at a later stage in their career. Always have great chemistry when they're together, even when they were in their prime. To this point, when this one happened, being the greatest WrestleMania match ever. Their second one was great, but just wasn't as great as the first one. So this one has to be the best WrestleMania match of all time. It's a tough decision. There was a couple other ones that were in the running for this, like WrestleMania 13, Bret Austin, WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match. So many great matches to call back on in terms of WWE WrestleMania history, but HBK Undertaker 1 is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's your host, your boy George Mackay from the Straight Talk Wrestling Podcast. And I was asked by SCW to drop my favorite WrestleMania or favorite WrestleMania match. Well, that's easy because WrestleMania 10, Bret versus Owen, brother versus brother. Two of the greatest Canadian wrestlers, and in my opinion, greatest technical wrestlers of all time, telling a timeless story that you can watch again and again and see the match in a different way every single time you watch it. These two were at the top of their game probably hadn't even reached their peaks yet, but were definitely close to the top. And they set the bar for all forms of storytelling when it came to sibling rivalries and just great tactical matches. This match is one of the greatest dances of all time. And that's the easiest video that I could possibly do. So peace, love, and wrestling. Enjoy WrestleMania. And check out Straight Talk Wrestling when you get a chance. Straight Talk Wrestling on YouTube, Instagram, @_Straight Talk on Twitter, Straight Talk Wrestling on Facebook. Peace.
Okay, so Steve messaged me and he also wants my favourite WrestleMania match of all time, what I think the best WrestleMania match is. And I have to give a shout out to Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 21. Absolutely love the story told in that match. But for the best match of all time, best WrestleMania match of all time, I have to go with Steve Austin versus Bret Hart from WrestleMania 13 submission match, the infamous double turn. This was absolutely amazing. The story is probably one of the best story told of all time. Had great wrestling, like brawling, technical work, everything you want. The crowd were just super into it. You had Ken Shamrock as the referee, which is awesome. And yeah, just from start to finish, this was just unbelievable. Hasn't been done as well since, even though they've tried. But yeah, Bret Hart versus Austin, what I think is the best WrestleMania match of all time. Cheers, Steve.
What is going on, everyone? It is Kyle Gagliardi from the On The Mark Wrestling Podcast. And for me personally, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time is between Triple H and The Undertaker. WrestleMania 28, Hell in the Cell, with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. Now, I haven't been watching wrestling as long as some people. I started watching in 2010. But for me, this one stood out above the rest. I have seen some older WrestleMania matches, but for me personally, this is the greatest match. The storyline was there. You have the history of all three men, and it truly was an end of an era. So for me personally, Triple H versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 28 is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time.
Big thank you there to Kyle from On The Mark Wrestling Podcast. And got to say, great minds think alike. Like your selection there. Also, a big shout as well to Wrestling by Wardridge. We had George McKay from Straight Talk Wrestling. We also had Rated R For Rasslin, which ironically, I was on his channel doing a retro review of WrestleMania 9 last year. Definitely a lot of fun. If you've got time to check that video out. And of course, a big thank you also to the best man at my wedding. I say it every time, is none other than James from This Week in Metropolis. But let's see then what it's done to the scorecard at this point. And currently in the lead with 2 votes each is The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25, as well as Undertaker versus Triple H at WrestleMania 28. And still a host of matches in 3rd place with 1 vote each, including Bret Hart versus Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10. We've got Bret and Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 12. Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin, the submission match from WrestleMania 13. TLC 2 from 17, along with Stone Cold and The Rock at 17. We also have Rock and Hollywood Hogan at 18. Steve Austin versus The Rock at 19. Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks at 37. And looking ahead of time, we've got Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 38. So plenty of time for it to change what will be the number 1 at the end of this video. Let's get a few more channels involved to give a few more votes, shall we? Coming up next then, she's back on the channel once again. A Wrestling Gal podcast available on all audio platforms, but now has its own YouTube channel as well. It is the one, the only, Ella J, back here on SCW.
Hello everybody, Ella J here of A Wrestling Gal podcast, here to talk about the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. And personally, I have two of them. One is for sentimental reasons, and that being Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, the streak versus career at WrestleMania 26. Now, I know a lot of people will say perhaps WrestleMania 25 was the better of their two back-to-back years at WrestleMania, but for me, sentimentally, Shawn Michaels going in that one last defying moment with mocking the Undertaker with the rest in peace sign and then being put away really symbolized the end of an era. Of course, Shawn Michaels being my favorite of all time, and also the quality of the matchup, the story, the treasured career of both competitors, and I found it very fitting at the time for Undertaker to be the one to put away Shawn Michaels. And of course, the story and the build leading up to that, I grew up watching live, so for me there was a lot of emotion in that matchup, and definitely quality of competition too. But also, I mean, even just last year, WrestleMania 37 between Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's Championship. That match had a lot of also sentimental value. Also, it really transcended reality, but also you had the strength of Bianca Belair versus the cunningness, the brains of Sasha Banks definitely going at it, and that itself was history making for women to main event WrestleMania. Night one last year was definitely huge as well, and what a moment for Bianca Belair. Again, got me emotional. Maybe my favorites are the emotional ones. So for me, those are two of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time.
Thank you to Steve once again for letting me be a part of this, and for letting me choose what I believe to be the best WrestleMania match of all time, which I believe has to go to Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan from WrestleMania 35. I don't know if this is a controversial call, but I'm making it. To me, this match is the perfect summary of everything that WrestleMania should be about. Turning people into heroes, being the grandest stage of them all, charting the rise from the bottom all the way to the top of the mountain. In many ways, it is the perfect encapsulation of what wrestling should be. Kofi facing challenge after challenge and shattering that glass ceiling and reaching the peak. There's not enough that I can also say about Bryan's performance in this match, and just for one brief time while watching wrestling, we really felt the need to cry at what we had just seen. This match, personally, is an artistic spectacle, and I cannot give them enough respect for it, and it will be one that I will go back and watch for many, many years to come.
What's up, everybody? It's Bama Dave with the Bama Slammer. I just wanted to take a minute and answer the question that was posed to me, which is, what, in your opinion, is your favorite WrestleMania match of all time? Probably not a shock to anybody, but this is probably, in my opinion, only my favorite WrestleMania match of all time. It may go down as the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. It's also my favorite personal match of all time, and that is The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. It's just an epic match. The storytelling, from the entrances to the moves to the Undertaker hitting the cameraman in the suicide dive, Shawn Michaels going on the last ride in the choke slam, kicking out of the tombstone, Taker's face, that out-of-body experience moment. Finally, Shawn going for the moonsault, Taker catching him and tombstoning him for the win. Just, without a doubt, one of the greatest matches in the history of professional wrestling. And in my opinion, The Undertaker and Shawn's, maybe both of them, one of their best matches of all time.
What's up, people? My name is Mex. I'm a wrestling fan, a wrestling enthusiast, a WrestleManiac, if you will. And Steve has asked me, what is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? I mean, Steve is not easy with these questions. He's always asking the tough questions. And I'm always here scratching my head thinking, for me, there are so many great matches that have happened at Mania, man. This is almost impossible to ask. I think my instant reaction go-to is always kind of Rock versus Hogan. I know in terms of technical ability, now that we're all a bit older, we watch wrestling a bit differently. This isn't the greatest match. However, I just think what it signifies in terms of what WrestleMania is, what it should be, showcase of the immortals, the big matches, Rock versus Hogan. It's very hard to find, you know, a match of bigger, you know, caliber than that. I think Rock versus Hogan is definitely up there. However, one that I always go to and I always enjoy watching, I'm going to say, is Triple H versus Undertaker, Hell in a Cell, Shawn Michaels, special guest referee. The drama in that match is incredible. Like, the conflict with Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, Triple H and Undertaker, his opponent, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Like, it is such a good match from top to bottom. End of an era. All of them should have drawn the line under their careers right there. Some did, some didn't. But yeah, it's a phenomenal match and probably one of my favorites in recent memory to always go back and watch. So there you go, Steve. I've given you 2. Stop asking me the hard questions, and I look forward to seeing what everyone else has to say.
Yo, what's going on? It's enough from the Wrestling's podcast, and again, big up SCW. Yo, make sure you subscribe and comment, all that sort of jazz. But yeah, the greatest match of all time. There's plenty. There is plenty, and obviously, first and foremost, this is my opinion, so don't attack me. Don't come and send me your dumb trolling messages. But yeah, if I had to pick one, best WrestleMania match of all time, I've got 3, so I'm gonna give you the 3, then I'm gonna knuckle it down to 1. So the first one I'm going to give you is Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan. That one there means so much to me, simply because he's the first black champion. Also Ghanaian, to be precise. I'm from Ghana as well, so it was nice seeing another fellow Ghanaian winning. Also another match there, Stone Cold versus The Rock at WrestleMania 17. I have no words. Like, yeah, you know what time it is when I say that match, man. Very great match. And lastly, if I had to add another match there, lost my head now, man. Yeah, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, man. I think it was the first one they had. I think it was like WrestleMania. I forgot what WrestleMania was, but it's the first one, the first match they had together. Amazing match. Actually, forget that match. Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair. I don't know when that was. It was one of the WrestleManias, 20s. But yeah, great match. A lot of emotion, a lot of storytelling. Amazing match. I remember I watched that match back home in Ghana, so yeah, you can imagine how gassed I was in that. But yeah, if I was to knuckle it down to 1, it'll be The Rock versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania 17. Great match, great storytelling, a nice turn, and yeah, my love for Stone Cold grew then.
Yo, it's your boy Laps of the Wrestling's podcast. I just want to say the best WrestleMania match has to be between The Rock and Hollywood Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. These were the 2 most iconic superstars of their generation coming face to face on the grandest stage of them all. This was a dream match in the making. We had a masterclass of in-ring psychology and great crowd control. If you look back on certain moments within the match, the crowd were torn between who to cheer for, The Rock or the immortal Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Again, this is a historical moment within wrestling history, possibly a passing of the torch moment, and in my personal opinion, has to be one of the best matches of WrestleMania history.
Yo, what it do, people? It's your boy Delboy here from Wrestlings, and we're back at like Crack Addicts. Big up SCW. And today we're going to be talking about the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. I already feel like people are going to be mentioning this one match, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. So I'm not going to mention it. No. Oh yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about another match, which for me happened a few years earlier. I feel like this is what you call like perfection. It is a wrestling clinic. A slobber knocker, if you will. WrestleMania 21. Have a guess what match I'm talking about. Yeah, you probably guessed correct. HBK versus the Olympic gold medalist. Okay, I was about to say Shawn Michaels, don't mind me. I've had a long day. But I feel like that match alone goes without saying. Technical classic. Counter for counter. High stakes, high emotions. It was just, I can't even explain it. For me, yeah, that's one of the... For me, that's my favourite WrestleMania match ever. Bar Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels. But HBK versus Kurt Angle, yeah, it edges it just a bit.
Big thank you there to the boys from Wrestlings there for you, all giving different selections as well. Give me interest to see what that will do to the standings. As well as that, big thank you to WrestleMania UK. Can't promise I'll stop asking the tough questions, but I'll do my best to try. Big thank you as well to the Bama Slammer Wrestling Podcast, Sweet Chinwag Podcast, and as well, of course, Ella J, a wrestling gal there. And let's see what their votes have now done to the scoreboard. And as you can see, things are very interesting at the top with a three-way tie there for you. The Rock versus Hollywood Hogan at WrestleMania 18, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25, and The Undertaker versus Triple H at WrestleMania 28, with all having 3 votes each. In 4th place, we've got 2 matches in there with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock at WrestleMania 17, along with Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks from WrestleMania 37, 2 votes there apiece. And then in 6th place, then we've got a host of matches: Bret versus Owen, we've got Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, we've got Bret versus Stone Cold. Along with that, TLC 2, Stone Cold versus The Rock from WrestleMania 19, Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 21, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 26, Kofi versus Daniel Bryan in there from WrestleMania 35, and of course, looking into the future, Roman versus Brock from this year's WrestleMania. So it is neck and neck at the top. Will it remain the same, or will we get one match that goes ahead of the pack? Let's find out now. We're getting a few more YouTube channels in play. Starting off then with someone who's started a brand new channel off. Of course, he was involved before with It's My Wrestling Podcast. He's moved on from that now. He's got a YouTube gaming channel, including wrestling, including WWE 2K22. It is none other than Deez Games here on SCW.
Hey guys, Steve has asked me to break down what my favourite WrestleMania match of all time is, and it's a pretty easy one. It's still probably arguably my favourite match of all time outside of just WrestleManias. TLC 2, WrestleMania 17, Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, all the interference from the likes of Lita and Rhino and Spike Dudley, all those amazing moments and spots and just thrills and spills. It was chaos, it was constantly just drama and just crazy bumps, everything that obviously Jeff did. The spear from Edge to Jeff, such an iconic moment that has just stayed with me forever. I think of WrestleMania 17, I think of that spear off the ladder, I think of TLC 2. It epitomised tag team wrestling at that time as well, back when tag team wrestling was arguably the best it's ever been in WWF/WWE. Hasn't meant nearly as much for many, many years since. Man, as a huge tag team wrestling fan, that match just means a lot to me. Especially, like I said, as a kid growing up, just getting into wrestling. WrestleMania 17, my favourite pay-per-view of all time. That match really just made me fall in love with wrestling even more, and that hardcore style of wrestling as well.
Hey guys, it's Katie from the She Lead Showcase. My favorite WrestleMania match of all time. This is actually a really hard question because I don't know if I've ever actually sat down and thought about it. Man, I think I'm gonna go with one that just happened. Sasha versus Bianca, night 1 of WrestleMania, this past year. Because Bianca is a freaking superstar. Like, she can do it all. She is the EST. And women main eventing WrestleMania is something I always love to see, as it should be. Hopefully her and Becky get to main event this year, but that's a whole different story. But I think I have to go with Sasha and Bianca, just for the sheer fact that it was just 2 women instead of the 3 main eventing. The first 2 black female superstars to main event a pay-per-view. And like, it was just such a monumental moment to witness. I mean, you could see it in the emotions on both their faces. I was crying, they were crying. It was so good to see, and the match was incredible, and their chemistry's great. So I think I have to go with Sasha versus Bianca at this past WrestleMania.
Yeah, shout out to SCWSteve for having me on the channel. You already know who this is. It's Bonafide Heat, the one and only. And for me, the question is, what is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? And my answer is always going to be Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25. I remember where I was when I watched this match live. I remember I was a young kid. I had some friends in the neighborhood that wanted to hang out and go outside and play basketball or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm staying inside to watch this greatness just take place in front of my very eyes. Now, the WrestleMania itself was not very good overall, but this match, Undertaker vs. Shawn Michaels, I don't think any of us knew what we were going to expect coming in. And what this match ended up being was like one of the greatest wrestling matches I've ever seen. And I mean, this is on a short list of top WrestleMania matches in most people's minds. But for me, it's number one, will always be number one. It was flawless. It was the definition of a 5-star match. I loved everything, the false finishes, the sequences, the fact that the crowd was invested in both men. Like, this was two icons that had built up so much equity between the wrestling fan base. You had half the crowd that wanted Shawn Michaels, half the crowd that wanted The Undertaker. And to top it all off, it was in Texas, in the hometown, the home state of both of these men. So yeah, thank you, Steve. And that's it for me. Peace.
What's the word, y'all? This is Cinco, 1/3 of Know the Ropes podcast, hashtag KTR_podcast on your social media platforms. And for SCWSteve, my pick for the best WrestleMania match of all time has to be none other than WWE Champion Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston, with Kofi Kingston winning the WWE title. And I say this because their run of Kofi Mania leading up to WrestleMania was just a beautiful moment just for the whole wrestling community and to me personally as well. Just seeing the first time in a long time an African-American winning the WWE title again just meant a lot to me. So with that being said, I choose best WrestleMania match of all time, Kofi Kingston win the title over Daniel Bryan.
Favourite WrestleMania match of all time? Steve, thanks for asking me to be on your channel again. As always, people are getting used to this face here. It has to be Rock versus Hogan. Now, I want to premise this by saying there is a ton of great matches. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Randy Savage, Bret Hart versus Austin. All these different matches, tons of them throughout the history of WrestleMania. But what I would say is always up there, and one that I love watching, is Hogan versus Rock. That's that WCW versus WWF feeling. The end of that era, ending the Monday Night Wars, was officially packed away and gone because of this, and the match was just fun. The crowd was behind it, and it was just a very fun and enjoyable match, and still to this day stands the test of time.
Big thank you there to Nonstop Wrestling chat there for you, and a great vote. Another vote for Rock versus Hogan there for you from WrestleMania 18. Shout out as well to Know the Ropes podcast, Bonafide Heat, Shalit Showcase, and Deez Games as well, giving their votes for you. Big thanks to all those YouTube channels, and let's see what it's done to the standings. And we're still neck and neck in first place, but two matches now tying it top. We've got The Rock and Hollywood Hogan from WrestleMania 18, along with The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25, with 4 votes each. Joint third place now is Undertaker and Triple H from WrestleMania 28, and Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks from WrestleMania 37, with 3 votes each. We've then got in 5th place, we've got a couple of matches here. We've got TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17, along with Steve Austin versus The Rock. We've also got Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan from WrestleMania 35 with 2 votes each. And then from 8th place downwards there, we see a host of matches on 1 vote. 22 channels down, which means we've got 18 channels to go. Lots can happen, lots can change. Who will be at the top? But in the meantime, let's get our next YouTuber on the channel. It's great to have him back. Honestly, some of these videos are like movies. Honestly, some great takes as well in the wrestling community. It is the one, the only, Jimmy the Elitist, JTE, here on SCW.
Greatest WrestleMania match of all time. This one is once again the same thing as the best WrestleMania of all time. It's a topic which, yes, you can try and look outside the box and go with personal preferences. Personally, my personal favorite WrestleMania match of all time is Once in a Lifetime, but that can't be objectively the best match of all time for WrestleMania. Okay, for WrestleMania, the best match ever in the history of the event is Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. That is the best match in the history of professional wrestling. There is no match better in pro wrestling as far as story, character, emotion, match quality, moves, psychology, all of it. It was only 29 minutes, didn't need to go an hour and 4 minutes to be considered a great match. Just incredible. Simply incredible. Taker, Michaels, 25. The best WrestleMania match ever.
The host of Devious One, I've been here from Circle Debate Podcast. I want to go ahead and thank Steve so much for giving me the opportunity to go ahead and give my greatest WrestleMania match of all time. And my greatest WrestleMania match of all time will be none other than WrestleMania 12, which is Bret the Hitman Hart defending the World Wrestling Federation Championship versus the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. 1 hour, these two individuals put it all on the line. The psychology in the ring and the storytelling was in a whole hour, and plus when they went to sudden death. What a phenomenal, incredible match. And these two individuals show that they could put on a show, you know, pun intended, and they stole it at WrestleMania 12. But that's one of my greatest WrestleMania matches of all time.
Hey, it's Liz.
It's Jerry.
And we are from the WrestleSlam podcast. And my favourite WrestleMania match of all time is from Mania 17, where we had the Hardy Boys versus Edge and Christian versus the Dudleys, and Edge speared Jeff Hardy off a 20-foot ladder.
And mine is from WrestleMania 26, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, part 2. And Shawn Michaels' retirement match. Great match for so many reasons. Their match previous year, WrestleMania 25, was epic. So having the rematch and having Shawn retire. One of the greatest tombstones ever delivered by when Taker jumped off his knees and landed. Epic moment. So that was definitely my favourite WrestleMania match of all time.
Good call.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, this is Ed Fries from Love Wrestling's NXT. Thank you again, Steve, for having me on for this video. And when I think about the greatest match in WrestleMania history, there's so many that come to mind. There's so many great matches. Bret versus Owen at WrestleMania 10, the ladder match at WrestleMania 10, Hulk versus Andre, Steamboat versus Savage. But my favorite's a personal one. It's gotta be, again, I go back to one of my favorite wrestlers, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. That match is a masterpiece, and it is unreal how these two guys at that point in their career could go the way they went and steal the show. The entrances with Shawn coming from the heavens and The Undertaker coming from below. It's just a masterpiece in storytelling in the ring, on their way to the ring, the storyline going into it, and the storyline coming out of it.
There's a lot of good options here. I liked Macho Man versus Ted DiBiase. Not many people mention that one, but I liked it. I obviously am a very big proponent of Steve Austin versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13, and I think there's some great stuff later on. Some not Money in the Bank, some TLC matches, yes, some Money in the Bank matches, let's be fair, and some great Hell in a Cell matches that happened on WrestleMania cards. I think The Undertaker's got a lot to offer, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, but I still personally go all the way back to WrestleMania 12 and the Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. For me, that's everything I want out of wrestling. And a large part of it is just the fact that technically neither of them were the bad guy going into it. They just wanted a great wrestling match. I thought that's what we'd get from Edge and AJ, but apparently not.
I guess not either, of course, with Edge's recent heel turn on Monday Night Raw. But big thank you to Tom McConaughey, as always. Spoiler warning for you there, and congratulations on recently getting monetization on your channel. A big thank you as well to Ed Fries, also there for you. We also had the Wrestle Slam podcast, along with Circle of Debate, and of course, Jimmy the Elitist at JTE. Let's see what their votes now have done to the scores. And finally, one match has taken the lead in first place now with 6 votes. Is The Undertaker vs. Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25. We have in second place The Rock vs. Hollywood Hogan from WrestleMania 18, still sitting on 4 votes. In third place, we've got a host of matches now on 3 votes. Bret vs. Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 12 getting 2 votes in that last round. Of course, TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17, Undertaker vs. Triple H from WrestleMania 28, and Bianca Belair vs. Sasha Banks from WrestleMania 37. All in that tied position. In tied 7th place, we've got 3 more matches there for you. And of course then tied in 10th place is another host of matches on 1 vote. It is all very close still here in the voting. Will Undertaker and Shawn Michaels remain at number 1? Can Rock and Hollywood Hogan get back to the top position? And can one of the other matches get to the top spot? Only one way to find out as we go into our next YouTube channel, which has not 1 vote, not 2, but 3. This trio always been very supportive of this channel. I've been on a host of occasions. They're fantastic with their real hard-hitting opinions as well. Of course, I'm talking about none other than hard-hitting wrestling show here on SCW.
We're going to start off with the best WrestleMania match. Frank, go ahead. Kick it off.
Hey, look, my best WrestleMania match is WrestleMania 3, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. That was the one that turned me in to WWE wrestling.
Sweet. For me, I would say WrestleMania 25, the first match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. I think they had an instant classic that to me got me on my seat. I thought The Undertaker was going to lose, but to me it was an awesome match.
All right, might as well, I'm going to say was the match in WrestleMania 18, Icon versus Icon, The Rock defeating the Hollywood Hulk Hogan, to where we got to see the transition of Hogan from the NWO from a heel to a babyface and passing the torch to The Rock.
What is up, everyone? This is Dylan and Jordan here from the World Elite Podcast, and we are making this video to let everyone know what is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. And honestly, I think that you can look no further than the Triple Threat TLC match from WrestleMania 17 between the Hardy Boys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian, and it featured that phenomenal spear spot between Edge and Jeff Hardy. There's so many great matches you can look forward to in WrestleMania. So many, like one in particular, like Shawn Michaels and Undertaker from WrestleMania 25. But I think that Triple Threat TLC match from 17 just holds more to me than that one. So we got to go with that one. Can't wait to hear what everybody else says. But our favorite one is, of course, from WrestleMania 17.
Yo, it's Just from the GetCho podcast. I just want to do this real quick. I gotta say my favorite WrestleMania match is probably Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle. I mean, they could have a match with anybody. Eddie Guerrero lived up to his gimmick, lie, cheat, and steal. So that was a great match.
A to the K Wrestling Show here. So, greatest WrestleMania match of all time.
Well, Carl, for me, got to be Shawn Taker 1. You know, good versus evil, thematically the best, and just a fantastic match. And how can it not be a Taker match?
Well, I mean, for me, no Taker in mind. I'm going to go Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. I just think I love the double turn that we got. The actual finish of the match, for me, that's what made Stone Cold Steve Austin. Obviously, 316, Austin Day, so got to pick that one. But so many good matches to choose from. But yeah, there Oz.
SCW has kindly asked me what is my favourite WrestleMania match of all time, and in my eyes there's a lot of great ones, some modern ones, some old ones, but I'm going to go with an older banger. I'm going for Shawn Michaels vs Undertaker 2010 WrestleMania 26 retirement vs streak. To me that was a better match, right? In ring wise, I'd probably say 29 was better, but for me, the story for that whole show was built around Shawn Michaels. Is he retiring? The greatest to ever do it. One of them. Is he going to retire? In Arizona as well. So Shawn Michaels, that later was a great Mania as well. But for me, that main event was the best WrestleMania match of all time. Just a better story. Thank you, SCW, for having me on.
And a big thank you to you, Dan, for coming on as well. Along with the A to the K Wrestling Show, we had GetCho podcast, we had World Elite podcast, and as well as that, we had the HHWShow, the hard-hitting wrestling show. So many votes there in amongst that. Let's see then what that has done to the current standings. And still in the number 1 position is The Undertaker vs Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25 with 8 votes now. Creeping in now to joint second place with 5 votes is TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17. The Rock and Hollywood Hogan is also in that joint second spot from WrestleMania 18. A host of matches in 4th place that can still catch up with the top there. Bret Hart vs Shawn Michaels. We've got Undertaker vs Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 26. Undertaker Triple H from WrestleMania 28. And Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks from WrestleMania 37. Of course, then we've got on 2 votes, we've got Bret Hart and Steve Austin from 13. We've of course got Stone Cold and Rock from 17. Kofi and Daniel Bryan from WrestleMania 35. And a host of matches there on 1 vote. The newest ones coming in there are Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant from WrestleMania 3. And Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 20. And don't forget as well, leading up to each person that's being introduced, you are seeing my favourite matches from each and every WrestleMania as we go towards WrestleMania 38 and 39. Those will be the matches that I'm most looking forward to at this year's WrestleMania on night 1 and night 2 respectively. And of course the last entrant at number 40 are matches that I look forward to hopefully seeing at next year's WrestleMania. Those are the matches that I would want to see in 2023. But enough about that, it's time for the last round of voting then. Starting off then with someone with his very own YouTube channel covering WWE, AEW, we've got Impact Wrestling, NWA. If it's wrestling, he covers it. He's the simple man after all. He just likes to enjoy some good old-fashioned wrestling. He does some contributions as well with No DQ. It's great to have him back on the channel. It is none other than Mr. Noah Foster.
Hello, once again, it is the Superman. My name is Noah Foster, bringing you my thoughts on what I believe is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. Bar none, still stands to this day for me as a fan since 1992 when I figured out the saga that finally led to these two contending against each other for immortality when it came to the streak. When light faces dark, when 2 opposites collide, which one comes out on top? You couldn't ask for a more nail-biting, one-on-one, know each other, better encounter than Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. WrestleMania 25 for me is a one-match show, but will stand the testament of all time for me as a fan when it comes to what those two brought forward in that ring and that gasp look of Undertaker, seeing Shawn Michaels kick out of his tombstone pile driver and JR saying, "I just had out-body experience," one of the most immortal calls of all time. I couldn't have asked for a better storyteller than Jim Ross for this match, considering his history with these two men in particular. And Shawn Michaels, he truly did wrestle a practically near perfect match, made one mistake and got caught in the end. In my opinion, personally, if I thought the streak was going to end, it was going to be here, not when it actually did end. So for me, as a fan, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, for me, WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels vs. The Undertaker, streak and immortality. It's as simple as that.
What is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? There's so many. There is so many to pick from. Was this tougher than the greatest WrestleMania? Absolutely. However, I'm going to go with the main event of the first WrestleMania I remember, WrestleMania X7. I'm going to go with The Rock versus Stone Cold. When I look at that as a wrestling match, it just had everything. Brilliant promo package to start with. The sudden change, it was no disqualification, which I think made the match even better. The shock value of Vince, I know older fans think it's a bit shit, but to me, that is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. I wonder if anybody else picks it. Hopefully.
What's the story? Warren here from the Discus Lariat Collective. Thanks again, Steve, for having me on the show. Really appreciate it as always. And as far as my favourite WrestleMania match goes, it has to be Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. I think it just felt like a big deal anyway with the two guys that were in it. Mr. WrestleMania against, I suppose, WrestleMania incarnate being Undertaker. I think the crowd as well, just hanging on every single move. And I think as well what helped is it was like the closest thing you could get to an even split. You had so many Shawn Michaels fans, so many Undertaker fans, and it felt almost like even if Shawn Michaels had broken the streak that night, because of the quality of match it was, I don't think a lot of people would have been too disappointed. The commentary, as usual, fantastic. As I said, the crowd, just crazy crowd. Even when there was kind of like nothing really going on, or like kind of guys recovering, the crowd were still loud. We also had like crazy false finishes, that crash and burn moment with Undertaker as well, the crazy dive. Just everything about it. It was the closest thing you could get to a cinematic match at that time before we had those cinematic matches. It just felt like a fight scene out of a film almost, with like the facial expressions and the selling and everything. It was just fantastic. So that's my favourite WrestleMania match of all time.
Hello everybody, Samira here, and what is my favorite WWE WrestleMania match of all time? To be honest with you, I think it would be anything of the Undertaker's streak matches. Oh my gosh, like who doesn't think of the Undertaker when you're talking about WrestleMania? I know I do, so any match of his that has involved his streak is definitely for me, you know, one of the greatest matches of all time, like any of them at all, because I don't know. I know we say that Shawn Michaels is, you know, Mr. WrestleMania, but I think of The Undertaker right away when it comes to that. But if a match specifically, I would say either the first or the second one of his with Triple H, because I remember that very clearly. And yeah, I think that would be it. There's probably so much more popping in my head, but I honestly, Undertaker just jumps out at me.
This is Dan from the Bump Boys. My favorite WrestleMania match of all time is Shawn Michaels Undertaker 2, the one that Shawn Michaels retirement match. So that means nothing, when the greatest, like just the pressure and everything. What about you, Joe?
For mine, hands down, Rock finally defeating Stone Cold. Rock Stone Cold 3. You know, that's the on the table. You know, you had the moment at the end, you know, where they, you know, he covers, they have this beautiful moment. And also you get them, you know, just taking each other's, you know, finishers. They're taking each other's gimmick. Can't get any bigger than Austin Rock 3.
Do you think that would be Wills?
That's easily Wills. That's easily Wills. But
Okay.
That's been the Bump Boys.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryan Awesome, and I am the host of the Ryan Awesome Show. Once again, man, I'd like to thank Steve for inviting me to his show once again to give him my opinion on the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. The greatest WrestleMania match of all time, without a shadow of a doubt, man. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. Such a great match, man. Such a great match. I enjoyed the lead up to the match. Shawn Michaels had to go through roadblocks to get to Taker. He had to go through JBL because at that point he was working for JBL. And he had to do JBL's dirty work and all that stuff. He had a match with JBL. He beat JBL. And he had to go through Vladimir Kozlov because at that point he was undefeated. Vladimir Kozlov was. So he beat Kozlov. And he got his match. He got his match with Taker. A match that should have been the main event of that show, but I digress. But yeah, man, I love the pacing of the match. The pacing of the match, it wasn't too fast. They knew when to pick it up. They knew when to slow it down. But the entire time it was slowed down. And yeah, we had some great spots in this match too. Great spots. The most classic spot in that match was Undertaker diving over the top rope and Shawn Michaels just pushing the referee out of the way and pulling the cameraman away. And Taker didn't even land on the cameraman. He barely landed on him. He hit head first on that floor. A move that could have ended his career. But Taker, he got up after that, got back into the ring. Shawn Michaels is in the ring too. Shawn Michaels tried to get that count out victory. By any means necessary, win by any means necessary, because if he did win by count out, streak is over. But yeah, Shawn, he tried his best to win that match. They were able to tell a story. In that match. The classic meme, bro, a meme that you'll see all over the internet, bro, of Undertaker, his face at the Shawn Michaels kick out of the first Tombstone power drive. You saw the look on Undertaker's face. It was so classic, bro. It was so classic. Shawn Michaels tried to go for the moonsault. Undertaker caught him in midair and gave him a Tombstone power driver 1, 2, 3, and that was it. That was it, man. That was it. And this was one of the great matches, man. One of the great matches. You know, they have a long history, of course. They have a long history. We all know that. One of the best WrestleMania matches. Not only one of the best WrestleMania matches, but the best match ever in that company. And then they ended up having a match. They ended up having a match the following year at that next WrestleMania, WrestleMania 26. Title versus career. Or the streak versus the career. Yeah, the streak versus the career. And so, yeah, man, which is also a great match. But if I had to choose like the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, it would have to be this match. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25 in Houston, Texas. Once again, Steve, thank you for inviting me to your show, man. Thank you.
All right, Steve, thanks a lot for letting us join the chat on these great videos that you're producing. You got both the Hunter Machine here, BC Hunter from Wrestling with the Truth, along with the NWO Machine.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you having us on.
All right, we're going to first off tackle the question, what is the greatest WWE WrestleMania match of all time? Want me to go first, Machine?
Yeah, you can.
All right, mine's an easy one. It's my favorite match of all time. I'm going with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. Don't need to break it down too much. It's just, to me, it's just the perfect storytelling of a match that you could possibly have. You have the double turn. You have Bret getting Austin over. You have Austin getting himself over. The announcers got everybody over. It was just perfect in my eyes. Love that match. It's my favorite match to date. I probably watch it once a year at least, and I will never stop watching it. So that's my pick. Machine.
Cool. You know, I have two that in my head, I just can't pick one of them. I guess I'm going to go with Hogan and Rock. I was at that one, and the electricity was ridiculous. The fact that the fans in Toronto would not I mean, would not let Hogan be heel. It just wasn't happening. And you can almost see, if you watch it like on a video now, you look at The Rock's face and you look at Hogan, Hogan's telling him, if I don't want you to have this, you're not having it, kid. You know, like, this is them. Like, the crowd was just, they just didn't want him to be bad. And again, that ending where, you know, Rock basically pulled Hogan back to bring him back to the good light. He had to. There was no choice in the matter. That torch got passed, but he had to hold Hogan's hand high. And to me, that was the great, like, I got goosebumps thinking about it. And the other one, I've said it before, I'll say it every single time, was Slaughter Hogan in WrestleMania 7. It was just good versus evil. They were in a wartime. It's what everyone had to escape and get the victory, you know, because the States needs that victory. It's almost like, to me right now, if you brought Nikolai Volkov in versus Hulk Hogan and he crushed him, we would be happy because we want the Russians crushed again. And those are my two picks. To me, both equal for different reasons.
I can't argue with either of those. Both great choices. I mean, master storytelling once again. Rock and Hogan had the crowd eating out of the palm of their hands. Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot for that contribution, Machine. And thank you, Steve, for inviting us on.
Best match, man. Oh man, this question is so overrated because it's like, it's so many great ones, man. It's hard to pick one, but if I want to talk about like story to like match, outcome, everything, I would have to say Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. I know that sounds cliche, but just everything about that match, like the lead to it, the matchup, the outcome, everything was just spectacular. And I was hoping to say WrestleMania 26 with Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, but the first one was definitely spectacular. Like, it was definitely, the match was definitely better. A lot of people say WrestleMania 26 match was better, but how? Because of the story going into it? Like, no, that's no. So so yeah, I'm going to say, guys, Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, WrestleMania 25.
So there you have it, a host of names there to thank the Showstopper TV. We've had Wrestling with the Truth podcast. We've had the Ryan Awesome Show, as well as a big thank you to the Bump Boys. It's Samira, Warren from the Discus Lariat Collective, Scott Retro Wrestling, and of course Noah Foster. So that's all the channels there, all the votes collected together. Who is the winner and voted the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? That's right, you've guessed it. It is none other than The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels for WrestleMania 25 with 12 votes. Going through to see what the rest there, we had in second place Hollywood Hogan and The Rock from WrestleMania 18 on 6 votes. We've had in third place TLC 2, of course, from WrestleMania 17 on 5 votes. Then, of course, we had Undertaker vs. Shawn Michaels again, this time at WrestleMania 26 on 4 votes, finishing in 4th place. In 5th place on 3 vote seats, a host of matches there, Bret Hart vs. HBK from WrestleMania 12, Bret Hart vs. Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13, Steve Austin vs. The Rock from WrestleMania 17, Undertaker vs. Triple H from WrestleMania 28, and Bianca Belair vs. Sasha Banks from WrestleMania 37. In joint 10th place, we've got Steve Austin vs. The Rock from WrestleMania 19 and Kofi Kingston vs. Daniel Bryan from WrestleMania 35 on 2 votes apiece. And then joint in 12th place, we've got Hogan vs. Andre the Giant from WrestleMania 3, Hogan vs. Sergeant Slaughter from WrestleMania 7, Bret Hart vs. Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10, we've got Undertaker vs. Triple H from WrestleMania 17, Eddie Guerrero vs. Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 20, Shawn Michaels vs. Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 21, and looking into the future, we've got Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. So that's what Wrestling YouTube thinks. Have we got it right? Is Undertaker vs. Shawn Michaels the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? It is now your turn to let me know in the comments below right now what you think is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. If you've enjoyed this video, then please like it, share with a friend as well, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that beautiful bell, the notifications one, and set the settings to all, each and every time a new video is released, as we are on the road to WrestleMania 38. And while you're at it as well, go into the description of this video also and click on the links to every wrestling YouTube channel is featured in this video. Go and show them some love, subscribe to their channel, watch a video of theirs as well, drop a like, drop a comment, let them know that you've passed by and that you've gone and checked out their content. On the channel for you also, if you haven't seen it already, is what is the greatest WrestleMania event of all time. That has got 38 wrestling YouTube channels on it, so I recommend to go and check that video out now. And as well, check out these other videos on the side of your screen also. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for watching SCW here on YouTube. I will see you once again very, very soon. All the best, and thanks for watching.